source of energy and awareness and the feeling within. Another beautiful statement from Atharva Veda is, it says only one energy that becomes so many forms and so many processes. I am one, I become many. We play many roles all the time in different roles. Each moment we make that decision to play the role. The trilogy of life, the organic living structure, interacts with the environment via a sensorium, sensory motor organs, which is a specific product of its development and evolution. It does not make any sense to consider each of these three domains as independent of one another. They all work together as a single entity. And life is the synergy of these three domains. See? Synergy, working together. Synergy, synchrony of working together. These three domains of our mind or life, everything together. Now, this is a simple diagram about nature and nurture. That debate is always there. So, the environment and the experience continuously influences what we are born with genetically, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. But there is a sensitive period, as I showed here. This brief sensitive period are for certain functions like speech, learning a language, And this has been shown even in bird song, in birds, that singing birds, that the baby bird has to be exposed to the mother's song during that critical period. Then only the baby learns that particular bird song. You see, otherwise the baby can never learn that song. So it's very, very critical that the mother and child have that relationship during that critical period. In the animal mind, animal intelligence is mainly by doing things, movements, Then mirror neuron system. Some of you may have read about mirror neuron system, where an animal or a person copies whatever you observe. And what has been shown, that if I move my right hand, then the left part of my brain is activated, the neural circuits related to this hand. But not only that, if I see somebody else doing this movement, just looking at the other person doing that movement stimulates my neural circuit that are related to the hand movement. So we learn by just watching others do, and that's how we learn. A lot of the learning is by imitation, by simulation, by trying, you see. So that is called the enactive learning. Second is by seeing, iconic, seeing an image. This is the way to do it. And a lot of the learning occurs by image. And lastly, symbolic. Symbolic means representation of something. And then if you know the meaning, of course you have to know the meaning of the symbol. Like the famous equation E equals mc squared. If you don't know what each of those letters stand for, it would mean nothing. But if you understand it, then it is profound, you see. So symbolic, a lot of our human processing is symbolic. This is the diagram that is interesting, that we are bombarded with signals, sensory signals, lot of information that we receive. But all the information that we receive, see 10⁻⁹ bits per second, but only the sensory memory storage is like 1 per second. Lot of it is forgotten or faded or not paid attention to. And then some of it is verbalized, and you get about 20 bits per second. And in the primary memory or the working memory, you have 7 bits per second. 7 bits you can hold in the working memory. And then if you repeat that, then it goes to the secondary memory storage. And if you repeat it frequently, then it goes to the tertiary memory storage. And it lasts for a long time. Like some of the songs you learnt as a child, they stay with you for 40, 50 years. They bring back the memories. It comes out very easily, you see. But if you haven't paid attention to something, or if you haven't rehearsed it in your mind, then it dissipates. Here is something that you paid attention to and then you stopped. Immediately the information starts deteriorating, dissipating. If you look at it again, then it comes up again and then starts repeating. So the more you look at something, the more you practice, the more you dwell on something, the longer it can last. But if you just see it once, then you may forget it. So it's like a continuous, like a leaky accumulation of information. Primary emotions are seeking, lust, care, rage, fear, panic, and play. And there are specific neural circuits, even in animals, of these basic emotions. It's in the region of the brainstem. And then higher up, there are more complex emotions like empathy, trust, blame, guilt, shame, pride, things like that. And even higher than that is the feeling of contentment, mentalizing. Then most of the time we are stuck in this tertiary mode. We are stuck with the symbols and the related emotions. And there is a huge associative network. And what happens, even a single word, if you say, it spreads out as a great network of related memories and related emotions. And some words are very provocative, very sensitive. So different words or different images are very potent, very powerful, and they can create a network of associations. But during meditation, we have to let go of that and slowly come back to the very primal feeling of just being at ease with oneself and at home wherever you are, at home in the world. Now these are the 7 primary processes: seeking, rage, fear, lust and grief. These are the negative emotions, and the positive emotions are like play and care. But we need to develop more of the positive feelings and less of the negative feelings. There are these specific neural networks for respiratory network, wakefulness generating system and the sleep generating system. Now the periaqueductal gray is a part of the region of the midbrain, and Panksepp thinks that periaqueductal gray integrates a lot of information from the whole brain as well as spinal cord. It's like almost like the CPU, central processing unit, so far as the emotions and thoughts are concerned. This green box is part of the neural circuit that is involved in what he calls the homeostatic circuit or the life regulation network, which coordinates our breathing, heart, blood pressure, all those things, very primal. And this produces a sense of being, what he calls the proto-self, which we may not be aware of, but it is always there, and life depends on this. But this other region is the reticular activating system that arouses the whole brain and the behavior and everything. So here is the inspiratory area, and as I was telling you, H ion or proton and CO2, this region, these neurons are continuously stimulated by the hydrogen ion concentration or pH in the CSF. And also the CO2, respiration is very sensitive to CO2 and pH or hydrogen. Now this center again then controlled by the higher center called the pneumotaxic center, and that again is controlled by the orbitofrontal cortex for voluntary control. When we do pranayam and control our breathing, like Kapalabhati or Anulom Vilom, different types of pranayam, we intentionally or voluntarily control our breathing. And during meditation, we try to calm the breathing. We try to breathe slowly and very low and quiet as much as we can, and reduce this rate of breathing also during meditative state and become quiet. In this animal, you can see that the diaphragm and the olfactory bulb and its stimulation is almost synchronous. Again, this has been shown when you breathe in, you stimulate the olfactory neurons, and the olfactory system goes all the way to the brainstem. So, when you do Anulom Vilom, you are directly stimulating the olfactory system, the limbic system, all the way up to the brainstem. So, it's a direct stimulation of the brain. We can take any signal from the human body, breathing, EEG activity, magnetic activity, muscle activity, and then amplify that signal and feed it through the computer, and you can control all these different gadgets like a electronic wheelchair, electronic arm, or play a piano, or play the computer, keyboard. Here is a person who is paralyzed, but he is controlling the wheelchair by his breathing, inhalation, exhalation, and that signal of inhalation, exhalation is amplified and then transmitted to the wheelchair, and he can control that. Now, our experience of pleasure depends on what is called the reward system or the pleasure system. When something feels good, like you have nice chocolate with caramel ice cream or something like that, or whatever feels good, it stimulates the ventral tegmental area, and the ventral tegmental area then produces dopamine, and that dopamine stimulates the nucleus accumbens or the pleasure center, and it also stimulates the septum and the prefrontal cortex and the basal ganglia, and you have a feeling of joy, happiness, pleasure. Of course, if you take drugs, some of the drugs, of course, stimulate that center. You see? And then you get hooked on it. Like cocaine. Cocaine acts like this. It stimulates that. It stimulates the nucleus accumbens. And then you want more and more of that high, and then you get into trouble. But it's better to stimulate that in a natural way, like the runner's high, people who run, or meditators high, people who meditate and enjoy being like that. So, this is a well-known diagram of hierarchy of needs by Maslow. But he kind of made it clear, and people still respect that you have to fulfill the basic physiological needs, then the safety needs, and then love and belonging, self-esteem, and finally self-actualization. Even Buddha said also that if somebody comes hungry to you, don't give him lessons in meditation, give him food. You have to make peace with your body, you have to make peace with your, whatever the nature's need are, you pay attention to that. Don't ignore the body, respect the body. Did you inherit your level of happiness? And what has been found that about 50% is genetic, 40% is under your control, and 10% is circumstances, your happiness. If you notice that some of the traditions in Zen or Japanese culture, they sit in front of a blank screen with eyes open. Here you will notice on the y-axis you can see the number of sakkars, that means number of eye movements per second. And this red is just the fixation, that there are no eye movements, just a blink like 1 per second or so. Of course, in yoga, some people say focus on the forehead, or some particular spot at a distance, but you have to minimize the number of random eye movements, like wandering eyes and wandering mind, you see. One of my hypotheses, and I published this in the paper, that we have non-REM sleep. REM means rapid eye movement. Non-REM sleep means dreamless sleep. REM sleep means dream sleep. Wakefulness, of course, has a lot of random eye movement. And the Turiya, the fourth state, I called it the non-REM wakefulness. It is wakefulness without wandering eyes or without wandering mind. Such a mind is naturally focused. It can dwell on whatever it chooses to dwell on, and it can do wonders, you see. This is the stream of conscious moments I talked to you about. Especially those who have read something about the gamma activity. There is a lot of buzz about gamma frequency. Gamma frequency is like 30 to 90 hertz, 30 to 60 hertz or cycles per second brain activity. When we are engaged in doing something, whether it's a motor activity you pursue or speaking, that particular part of the brain demonstrates gamma frequency activity. Whichever part of the brain, cortical activity, is related to that gamma frequency at that particular, and that will manifest as behavior. But in between, there is no gamma activity. There is alpha or beta activity. This is called the global workspace. Our mind works as a big space, global workspace, in which different events occurs. For example, a simple event of a coffee cup or looking at a single star, like Buddha was enlightened by looking at the morning star, but his mind was so receptive. He was ready for it. And then these events give us a feeling of knowing, and then we respond to it. See, this particular signal then is transmitted or broadcasted to the rest of the brain, to the cortex. And then we respond to it by some verbal response from this is the perception and this is the action. This is during our inner speech, certain areas of the brain are constantly active, and this is visual memory. This is a simple movement of a finger, index finger, and you can see that 6 different volunteers have the same activity in the same part of the brain by a simple movement of moving the index finger up or down. So it's all a question of signal wiring and signal processing in the brain. And now we can demonstrate that. Now we can also become aware of the intention, our own intention. See, this part is the intention of moving the finger, not just the moving finger, but just thinking that I'm going to move my index finger. And then these 2 areas light up in the parietal lobe when I become aware of my intention to move that finger. So we can now ask more subtle questions, and by functional mapping, we can demonstrate what happens in the brain in these complex actions. These are the 3 modes of narrative, minimal, and self-awareness. Narrative means the talkative brain. One of the other terms for human beings is homo loquens. So I have self-referential thought, that's the narrative mode. I experience the present moment, and finally the present moment experiencing, or the selfless awareness. Here during narrative you have the left hemispheric activity, and during awareness more central activity, and the right hemispheric activity. This is self-awareness. You can see that the parietal area is active and also the thalamus is active. These are some of the activities while you are meditating, what your experience is. Now we can do this online, and you can give a feedback online to the person who is meditating how you are doing. These blue areas are how well they are doing in a particular way. You can monitor that. The so-called chakras, Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipur, Anahata, Vishuddha chakra, Ajna chakra, Soma chakra, and Sahasrara chakra, they are more in the brain, in the cortex. You have to think of that, thalamocortical circuits, not just in the spinal cord. Initially, Freud's model of conscious and subconscious was this: id, ego, and superego. Now, the current textbook of psychiatry put that id is here, id, and the limbic system becomes the Then ego is this yellow part, and this very front part is the superego, the so-called conscience. The emotions can be controlled by the prefrontal cortex. So there are multiple areas of prefrontal cortex. That's how we exert self-control or willful action or voluntary action. This is the neuroscience of stress. One is a very fast response. And if you suddenly saw something really dangerous, like a snake or a fire or a gun, everybody will just run without thinking about it. It's subconscious response. But if it is something different, then you have time to think about it and process cortical response. So fast and slow processing. Overcoming 4 fundamental fears. I call it the 4 eyes. The 4 things that all of us are afraid of. One is an injury, personal injury to the body, or nobody likes the pain and injury, so we are afraid of injury. Second is isolation. Nobody likes to be alone or neglected or no company, no friends, isolation. Third is insignificance. My life has no meaning. So that's another thing. And the fourth is inexistence or death. So these are the 4 things, 4 eyes I call, which we all have to overcome by our own behavior, our own attitude, and by interacting, relating to other people, with family, friends, and colleagues. These are the 4 stages of sleep: REM sleep, slow wave sleep, wakefulness. Believe it or not, the Mandukya Upanishad describes these 4 stages of sleep. It has only 12 mantras, and in the 12th grade, I used to recite those 12 mantras. Beautiful. Talks about these 4 stages of sleep wakefulness, and the 4th stage is the Turiya. Turiya, the 4th, is not that which cognizes the internal events, not that which cognizes the external events, not that which cognizes both, not a mass of cognition, not cognitive, not non-cognitive. It is unseen, unusable, ungraspable, featureless, unthinkable, unnameable, the essence of oneself, that into which the phenomenal world is resolved, the serene, the benign, non-dual, is the 4th conscious state. It is Atman, the self. It is to be realized. That is the beautiful part. Well, thank you.